Hello watch enthusiasts. Now today I'd like to talk about the best value pilot's watches on the market, and this is an interesting type of watch because most people overlook them and go on to dive watches or so on if they're looking for a sports watch, but the pilot's watch has played a really major part in history and in the history of aviation. So the first wristwatch which I'd like to show you is the Larco Flieger. Now Larco make a selection of Flieger watches, and these are based on their 1940s watches for the Luftwaffe, and feature two different types of dials, the A and the B type of dial. This one on the screen now is the B, which is the more complex 12-hour and minute setup. Now these watches were known for their large dials and great legibility, courtesy of their enormous size. The originals were 55mm, but the ones made by Larco these days, you can purchase the 55mm, but they come in a variety of 38mm watches and 42mm watches and 45mm watches as well. So they really will fit every wrist size. Now they also come in a variety of different price points depending on the movement. Some of them have Japanese-derived movements, others have Swiss manually wound or automatics. And at a very low price, if you want a budget offering, they do make Swiss quartz versions as well. Now the Type A has a more simple dial altogether, with only the ring of numerals around the edge rather than having the 12-hour markers in the middle as well, which does make for an altogether more simple dial layout. But I personally prefer the B because I think it's more characterful and harks back to the days of classic aviation. Now these watches are particularly good value because they're made by hand in Germany, and though they feature fairly off-the-shelf movements, i.e. ETA and Miyota movements, depending on which one you purchase, they are hand-assembled and are hand-finished. For example, the aged ones which one can buy are hand-aged, so they're damaged by hand, if you will. Which does take a certain amount of time, and for the price, these are excellent watches, and these range from about £150 for a quartz through to about £1,200 for a replica of the original, thus making them very, very good value. Now my next pick is the Glycine Airman. Now the Glycine Airman is an absolute icon in the aviation world. It is a watch which has which started the GMT, in that it came out before the Rolex GMT Master. And has that steel case and those very distinctive looks, which make it very legible and very rugged and robust for the true pilot. Not for example GMT Masters from Rolex, which these days are far more luxury pieces than they are professional tools. Now the more basic version of the two versions available, is the simple non-GMT version. Now this version, technically speaking, isn't a GMT, but it does have a 12-hour bezel like the Spectre Seamaster, which means that you can still track another time zone. It's not as though one cannot. So this is a 2-time zone watch with that secondary crown, which is so distinctive. Now this particular version of the watch comes at £900, and that may seem to be a fair deal for a watch which isn't a GMT in this sort of price bracket, but considering the heritage of this watch and how well built these are, they really are extremely good value for what you're getting. There is, however, the GMT version of this watch, which is also superb. This comes in at about £1,400, so it is a bit more, but this has the superb feature of a GMT hand, and it also has the GMT 24 hours on the inside of on the dial as well as the bezel, meaning that you can track 3 time zones easily, whereas with something like a Rolex GMT Master, you do have to remember that you're moving in 2-hour increments on the dial rather than 1-hour increments with the GMT hand, because it's a 24-hour hand. These watches are also superb for people who like to have a highly customized watch, because there are so many different versions and variants of this watch on the Glycine website and in their range. Now also these watches are water resistant to 200 meters, meaning they're perfect for swimming as well as aviation, meaning they're very, very versatile pieces to own. Now the most well-known feature of these watches is that second crown at I was going to say 8 o'clock, but of course no, that's 4 o'clock. because of that bezel. But that is actually a tooth type of mechanism. So when you screw out the crown, those teeth disengage from the teeth on the bezel, meaning that you can then turn the bezel. But it does mean that one can fix the bezel in place rather than having it slip around, which I suppose is a vestige of the times when bezels were friction fitted, so they didn't click, they slid smoothly and freely. Now this next watch is the Horas Big Crown Pro Pilot, and this is a truly superb watch. In terms of value for money, this truly is a superb offering from Horas. And for example, little touches like the fact that the hands are carbon fibre, in order to prevent them from bending under high G-force, just does show an attention to detail that isn't seen elsewhere at this sub £1,000 price point. So the simple three-handed version, like the one you see here, still has the details like the knurling around the bezel and the crown, which is very finely done, and those lightweight hands, but is still sub $1,000. So it's $995 to buy, and that converts in pounds to about £900, which is superb value, really. One version which I find very appealing is the twin crown altimeter version, which really does set this watch apart as a really professional pilot's watch. In that, like the fact that Horas has made their Aquis with the depth gauge, this shows they're the other end of the spectrum, I suppose. Equally, these watches are resistant to low pressure, so the crystal won't pop off if the cabin of the aircraft were to suddenly depressurize as well. Now the price for this version is around the £1,800–1,900 mark, which does seem like a fair amount of money for one of these watches, but considering the technology going into it, it really is a very good deal. There is also a GMT chronograph version for £2,300, and this one really does complete the package, and is a great watch whether you use it for aviation or not. Whereas the altimeter is very specific to that profession. This chronograph version can be used in any situation, really. Now my final pick is the SIN 903. Now this watch is a Navitimer, effectively. Now when Breitling went under in the 80s, they actually sold the design of the Navitimer to SIN, or Zin, if rather I pronounced it that way. Now this watch is still made by Zin, and actually features some technology which isn't seen on the Navitimer itself, notably the fact that it is water resistant to 100 meters rather than just 30, so it is actually waterproof in most circumstances, whereas the Breitling isn't. It also features a similar Valjoux series movement to the Breitling itself, which means that in terms of movements, this isn't any worse. Now, what truly is remarkable about this watch is the price. This watch costs £2,100 on the leather strap, rather than £5,000 for a Breitling, which really is incredible considering it shares the movement. Also, it does look beautiful on the leather strap that comes with the watch. Although it is available on a metal bracelet too, if that is what you'd rather have. Though I'd never advise wearing one of these watches on a bracelet, simply because that polished bracelet collects scratches like no one's business. Equally, this watch does look great on that leather strap because it exudes that vintage vibe because of its age. It's a 1950s design, and at the time very few watches were worn on bracelets, so really a NATO or a leather strap looked great on this watch. Now the loom on this watch is also excellent, on the hands and on the dial, which does make this watch very legible at night too. Equally, this watch is a professional pilot's watch because it does have that slide rule bezel, meaning that it can be used for making calculations in the air. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Do please like, share and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more on my channel, more content and so on. This is I'm on the Watch Guy, over and out.